Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I am Simon Clifton from Satellite Solutions Worldwide. I'm the Chief Technical Officer and founder. My responsibility in the business really is to take the capacity that's sitting inherently in the satellites and turn them into products which the company can sell. We do this by putting a small dish on the outside of the property, which can be either a business premises or it can be a consumer premises. Using a small set-top box, we then deliver broadband services which cover a wide variety of different flavours, depending whether the customer is a home user, whether they're a business user, whether they're a broadcaster, whether they're a large company trying to connect a building with 20, 30, 40, 50 people in. So essentially, there is an enormous amount of satellite capacity sitting there in the sky, and that is effectively a commodity market. So we as a company approach the satellite owners and we do deals to commercialise that capacity on the ground and deliver services which vary between markets depending on the state of the market and how wide the wired broadband infrastructure actually stretches. We don't have any exposure to the ownership of satellites, very expensive things to have floating around in the sky. But what we do is we basically look around to do the best possible deal we can do on the capacity and then commercialise it ourselves. So essentially, people are very surprised frequently to find out that there's something like 20 million people across Europe that can't get more than 2 megabits broadband over wires. Now that sounds like a huge number, and indeed it is, but the amount or the numbers vary in each country depending really on how much money is available from the incumbent telcos and the governments to extend the broadband and the fibre reach to rural areas. This information has come from Point Topic, which is a well-known broadband research company. We have a market-leading position in Europe. As a result of our listing on AIM in May 2012, we've grown significantly. Our business started in 2008, excuse me, and we've grown 30% incremental year-on-year organic growth. But we decided in 2014-15 that there was very significant opportunity in terms of the end of the rollout of the fibre infrastructure, where people would have to make a decision what they were going to do when they found out that they had or hadn't got fibre. And the government's intervention schemes that are coming through to basically enable broadband for people who couldn't get it any other way. So our company identified that also that there was a large number of smaller ISPs out there that hadn't really reached critical mass, and we therefore could identify there was an opportunity for a roll-up strategy. So we've grown successfully 7 years. We've now raised the money to start to buy other companies. We have high earnings visibility. I'm sure you're aware of the long-term revenue streams coming from telcos. We currently have 5% market share of the UK, and the government-backed schemes, I think, are going to change that significantly shortly. So we have an opportunity to consolidate the industry across Europe, and that's why we took the company to the market. Part of the reason for the acquisitions is for us to parachute into markets that we haven't necessarily been successful in the past. That's just because of the location. So, for instance, markets like Poland, obviously quite hard to reach from the UK, but through acquisition and through picking up the customer bases there, that's given us a footprint to start to expand into and capitalise the country. We've developed and designed our own IT platform, which sits in the background and enables us to commercialise the capacity, but also enables us to bill in 7 different languages, 4 different currencies. And that's currently enabled us to have customers in some 31 countries. Currently, as we sit here now, our systems in the background have got capacity for 100,000 subscribers. When we listed on AIM in May 2012, we were 11,000 customers. As we sit here today, we're currently sitting around 25,000, 26,000 customers. We leverage what's called Ka-band technology. This is a transformational satellite spectrum that came along about 4 or 5 years ago, which enables us to push about 10 times as much data down the same piece of space capacity as the old Ka band model, which you're used to seeing, with the big broadcasting trucks and the traditional broadcasting industry model. Coming back to the governments across Europe have all made commitments to their population that by certain dates, large percentages of the population will be enabled with fast broadband. And the only way, realistically, these guys are going to be able to do that is when they turn to alternative technologies like satellite. The money effectively has been spent in terms of rolling out the fibre infrastructure, in terms of rolling out ADSL. And so certainly the UK government made a commitment that by the end of 2015, the minimum commitment of 2 megabits would be available to all the population. And the only way they could actually physically do that was through satellite. Across the EU, there's a commitment now for all citizens to be connected to the internet by 2020. The only realistic way that ever is going to happen is when satellite is brought in to bear. In France, there's now a subvention, what we call a subvention scheme. This is where the government has come along and said they will actually pay for the hardware, pay for the connection for these people who are excluded to be connected via satellite. In the UK and in Wales, recently we've had the launch of their schemes, which means now that anywhere in the UK you are, if you can't get more than 2 megabits over wires, the government will pay for our equipment to connect you to satellite broadband. Our services go right up to super fast speeds, so you're talking about providing a consumer broadband service for any person, wherever they are in the UK, up to 30 megabits per second with free hardware. Other governments coming along line, Poland also, a very, very large market, which I talked about earlier. Their government scheme is also launching now shortly. Bit of an idea of how the revenues and how things have gone in the past. A key part of the roll-up strategy is obviously integrating and de-risking the companies that we've bought and turning those into EBIT, which is what we've been doing over the last 6 months. So we've made 6 acquisitions in the last 6 months. We're actually currently in a closed period before we release our first trading accounts, our first results, which will be out in the middle of March. And at that point, we'll also sort of announce the trajectory for where we expect to be going over the next year. But essentially, when we listed, we expected that by the end of 2016, we'd be at around 45,000 connections. With the progress we've made in terms of our acquisitions and our acquisition pipeline, we've now announced that will be nearer 100,000 consumer customers. The mix currently in terms of consumer and business is about 90% consumer, 10% business. And those business customers include people like the BBC, the Ministry of Defence, Sky News, Al Jazeera, and so we developed a suite of products that fits both the consumers and all aspects of the enterprise market. We have a simple office based in Bicester. We have 2 or 3 business centres now abroad where we've started to integrate the companies that we've bought. And as we continue the roll-up strategy, we expect to benefit considerably from the operational gearing, the fixed cost base, and the ability really to buy space capacity at a better price as we get larger and larger in the market. This just gives you a bit of an idea of how the base has increased since we started, and also since we got the money to start to acquire other businesses. So the initial period of the business, the company was quite limited in terms of funds. It was purely the funds of the directors that was basically keeping us going. We never borrowed any money from any banks. We became cash profitable late in 2000 or the middle of 2015. And it was at that point that we could really see that there was an opportunity for consolidation across Europe. There was the opportunity for the government intervention schemes. And we knew that we could go a lot faster if we could raise some money to be able to move forward. So we basically went to the AIM market. We came across a shell called Cleve Capital, which you may or may not have heard of. We reversed our business into that. That gave us about £5.5 million of cash, which we then moved on to the acquisition trail with. Our churn is typically low for a telecoms company. Obviously, if you have a broadband customer or a mobile customer, it's very easy for them to switch networks. Once a customer has invested in our hardware, it's more difficult for them to move realistically because there obviously is a fixed setup cost. So we would hope that by the end of this year, our churn is sitting something in the region of 7 to 9%, depending on how you classify it. We are affected by quite a lot of expat customers who turn their services on and off at different times of the year. But typically, stabilised would be about something like 9%, something in the region of half what you'd expect for a typical telecoms company. No one really needs to sort of say there is obviously a huge demand for broadband. All these articles, and there's been an enormous amount in the press recently about the sort of issue with rural communities and rural consumers being unable to develop their lives, being able to access training, but being unable to access children's homework, all these kind of things, without broadband. And the political pressure on governments is very significant for these rural areas to be enabled. So we're very confident that the government intervention schemes that are now here in France and here in the UK will start to spread further afield. But the product sells itself. You know, people need broadband. It's as simple as that. We know also that, and we're in a data selling business, that roughly every year, something like 30%, each customer will need something like 30% more data than they needed the year before. How do we fund that? Well, essentially, each generation of satellites that's launched becomes something in the region of twice or 3 or even 4 times more efficient. So that means that the price per bit of data continues to fall as each next satellite is launched. That enables us to deliver continually improving services, faster speeds, larger data allowances, more dynamic products, smaller antennas and smaller indoor modems, roughly for the same price, which means, you know, the product roadmap is very strong. So just a quick summary, 7 years of organic growth as a business, funded significantly by our AIM listing in May 2015. As far as we know, we're the sole market consolidator in terms of what is a fragmented market. There are many, many small satellite broadband ISPs across Europe, but what we would call maybe lifestyle businesses that have never really reached a critical mass. They've never really invested in this kind of infrastructure that we have, and therefore it's quite logical for us to look at to acquire them. The team, we have a fantastic management team, many of whom have worked together in other businesses successfully in the past. Many of us come from a cellular mobile background, and we understand that we have used the cellular model to great effectiveness in the satellite world. So our customers, when they buy the equipment from us, if they opt for higher tariffs, they get significantly cheaper hardware. So we're now very busy integrating the companies that we've bought and turning that into margin and revenue. We've got a new customer pipeline growing. Our organic sales are growing. We have a pipeline of acquisitions which we want to deliver on in the coming year. High levels of very strong quality recurring revenues, low churn, customers who are effectively typical customer age is something in the region of 3 to 4 years. People, once they come to the service, stay with us for a long time. And we've got a market which is underpinned by an increasing number of government subvention schemes. So that is it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.